Keir Starmer isn't just facing criticism, he's being accused of orchestrating the biggest political scam in modern British history. And not by some fringe blogger or anonymous source. These claims are coming from one of the country's most seasoned political minds, Andrew Neil. In 5 decades of political reporting, Neil has never used language this severe. Not for Thatcher, not for Blair, not even for Boris Johnson. But now, with Starmer at the helm, he's sounding the alarm. This isn't about bending the truth or playing political games. It's about a government whose very foundation, according to Neil, is built on deception. A scam so carefully constructed, so strategically executed, it's left the British public unknowingly trapped inside a lie. And the deeper you dig, the darker it gets. For decades, Andrew Neil has watched prime ministers rise and fall. He's covered scandals, wars, economic meltdowns, and leadership crises. But never, until now, has he openly accused a sitting prime minister of institutionalised lying. That changes with Keir Starmer. Neil's assessment isn't flippant or vague, it's forensic. He says Starmer's government doesn't just lie as a tactic. It lies as a modus operandi, a core operational strategy. In plain terms, lying isn't the Labour Party's bad habit, it's the business model. And when someone like Andrew Neil says that, it should shake the political system to its core. Because he's not pointing out one false claim or one broken promise. He's pointing to a system-wide scam, a political architecture designed to deceive, distract, and dominate. Let's talk about the so-called immigration victory Labour proudly took credit for. A massive social media campaign emerged overnight, claiming net migration had dropped nearly 50% under Starmer's leadership. Posters were plastered online with bold Labour logos, carefully crafted language, and smug celebratory undertones. But there's just one problem. Labour had nothing to do with it. The drop was due entirely to Conservative Home Secretary James Cleverly's policies drafted and implemented, before Labour even touched the file. Yet Starmer's team jumped in front of the cameras, paraded the result as their own, and attempted to rewrite the timeline. That's not political spin. That's policy theft. And it's dangerous. It sends a message to voters that reality is optional, that timelines don't matter, that Labour can plant their flag wherever the spotlight lands, regardless of who did the work. This is deception with intent. It's a deliberate, calculated misinformation campaign designed to mislead the public into thinking Labour is fixing the migration crisis when, in fact, they've done nothing of substance. Starmer didn't reduce migration, he reduced accountability. And that's just one layer of the scam. Let's rewind to when Keir Starmer first ran for Labour leader. He won on a platform soaked in left-wing pledges, promises carefully chosen to appeal to Jeremy Corbyn's base. He vowed to scrap tuition fees, reverse austerity cuts, renationalise rail, and raise taxes on the wealthy. He didn't call them proposals or ideas. He called them pledges, a word that implies moral obligation, not flexibility. But once Starmer secured power, those pledges disappeared. No vote, no debate, no apology, just gone. What does that tell us? It wasn't a change of heart, it was a con. Starmer used the left-wing base as a ladder, then kicked it away the moment he reached the top. It was never about policy, it was about access, control, authority. He hijacked the Labour Party's grassroots, drained its momentum, then repositioned himself as a centrist without facing a shred of democratic accountability. And now the same man who betrayed the movement that put him in power is parading around as the saviour of British politics. Andrew Neil knows this. And that's why his words cut so deep. When Neil says Starmer's government is built on lies, he's referring not just to broken promises, but to a systematic betrayal of trust, a manipulation of facts, timelines, and public perception so comprehensive that it fits the definition of a scam. The kind of scam where the victim doesn't even realise they've been conned until it's far too late. And Starmer's defence? Denial and distraction. Take the controversy around Labour's fiscal plans. The party claims there will be no tax rises, that they will fund all public services through growth and efficiency. But then in the next breath, they talk about adjusting national insurance, redefining thresholds, and targeted levies. Let's be clear, those are tax increases, plain and simple. It's a linguistic shell game. Rename the tax, shift the label, hope the public doesn't notice. This tactic has a name: semantic fraud. It's when politicians repackage harmful policies in softer language to avoid backlash. And Starmer's government has weaponized it with surgical precision. They're not telling the truth. They're performing a confidence trick with political jargon. It's like selling a used car with a fresh coat of paint. Looks shiny on the outside, but once it breaks down, it's too late. Even Starmer's stance on Brexit reeks of double dealing. He promised to make Brexit work, But insiders suggest he's quietly laying the groundwork for regulatory alignment with the EU, effectively reversing Brexit by stealth. No vote, no debate, just quiet incremental steps that lead Britain right back into the EU's orbit. If true, this isn't leadership, it's subversion. And once again, the British public is left in the dark, with their democratic choices undermined by a man too cowardly to be honest. What we're witnessing isn't just political manoeuvring, it's structural deception. A prime minister who doesn't just mislead the public, but does so systematically, deliberately, and repeatedly. A party that operates more like a PR agency than a government. And a public that's being force-fed a narrative built on fiction. Andrew Neil isn't alone in raising the alarm, but he is the loudest voice yet, and possibly the most credible. His warning is clear. Starmer's Labour isn't trying to fix Britain, it's trying to trick it. And unless the public wakes up, we may all be living inside the biggest political scam this country has ever seen. As Andrew Neil's explosive critique continues to reverberate across the political landscape, the broader implications for British democracy cannot be ignored. This isn't just about Starmer's personal credibility, it's about a system now being corroded from within. What happens when the official opposition turned government masters the art of deception so thoroughly that truth itself becomes obsolete? We're already seeing the effects. The public's trust in politicians is plummeting, voter apathy is on the rise, and meaningful debate has been replaced by smoke and mirrors. Starmer hasn't just lied. He's rewritten the rulebook on how to lie while maintaining the illusion of honesty. This is the scam at its most dangerous, when manipulation masquerades as leadership. Starmer's entire career is now being viewed through a new damning lens. He was once branded as a man of principle, a former director of public prosecutions, a legal mind of integrity, a quiet force of competence. But what Neil's revelations have exposed is the extent to which that image was carefully curated, not earned. Starmer's leadership has become a theatre of calculated illusion, where virtue is performed, not practiced. From the moment he donned the mantle of Labour leader, every move has been choreographed to appear moderate, trustworthy, and professional, while underneath, the engine of dishonesty churns relentlessly. One of the clearest examples of this double game lies in Starmer's public statements versus internal policy documents. Publicly, he claims to support working families, defend British jobs, and uphold national sovereignty. But behind closed doors, Labour insiders whisper of plans to expand mass migration schemes, deepen regulatory alignment with Brussels, and introduce stealth tax increases that will cripple the very middle class they pretend to defend. These aren't conspiracy theories, they're contradictions documented by former advisors, leaked memos, and even disgruntled Labour MPs who now speak out anonymously. The scam thrives not because people aren't looking, but because they're overwhelmed by layers of narrative management and political performance. This isn't politics as usual. This is deception at scale. Every soundbite is tested, every pledge vetted not for its moral clarity, but for its media survivability. And in this environment, genuine public service has been replaced by a kind of moral mercenary politics, where the truth is just another obstacle to spin past. Starmer has become the embodiment of this trend, a political figure who doesn't lead with vision, but with polls, doesn't govern by principle, but by focus group feedback. Even his most passionate supporters now struggle to define what he truly believes in. Let's return briefly to the betrayal of Labour's own base, the working-class voters who stuck with Labour during its darkest days, who defended Corbyn's platform and stood by the party when it was vilified, have now been cast aside. Their loyalty was milked and discarded the moment Starmer saw a clearer path to power by drifting rightward. And he didn't just abandon them, he insulted them. He accused his own former allies of being unrealistic, outdated, even dangerous, while parading around as the only adult in the room. This isn't evolution, it's opportunism, the kind that doesn't build bridges but burns them. Even on matters as sensitive as war and foreign policy, Starmer's pattern of deceit continues. He's made loud proclamations about Labour being a party of peace and diplomacy, yet continues to endorse positions that echo establishment warmongering without question. There's no nuance, no debate, no dissent within his ranks, just blind alignment with whatever global narrative keeps the press off his back. It's a political strategy that sacrifices integrity for ease and accountability for applause. And it's another pillar of the scam Neil exposed. Promise one thing, deliver another, and count on public fatigue to smother outrage. The media, too, has played a role in sustaining the illusion. With a few notable exceptions, like Neil himself, most mainstream outlets have given Starmer a comparatively soft ride. His blunders are buried, his contradictions ignored, and his scandals underreported. Why? Because Starmer doesn't threaten the establishment. He embodies it. He's safe, predictable, boring enough to pass as competent, yet cunning enough to maintain control. That makes him an ideal figurehead for a political class desperate to reassert authority after the chaos of Brexit and the populist wave that followed. But safe doesn't mean honest, and boring doesn't mean ethical. Starmer's scam is a quiet one. It doesn't explode with headlines. It seeps into the public consciousness like a slow drip. Promises that sound plausible but go undelivered. Claims that can't be fact-checked fast enough. A smile that says one thing while policies do another. This form of governance is not just cynical, it's corrosive. It erodes the very foundation of democracy, where leaders are supposed to be accountable, transparent, and principled. When deception becomes the default, democracy becomes theatre. And we are all left watching a performance that pretends to be progress. Even the so-called wins Starmer boasts about are built on sand. Take the economic outlook Labour has painted. They tout stability, growth, and recovery. But scratch beneath the surface, and you find rising debt, tax burdens shifting onto average families, and hidden cuts that will emerge only after the election is over. The forecasts used to justify their economic optimism have been described by independent economists as unrealistic and politically massacred. In other words, it's not a plan. It's a sales pitch. And once again, the British people are the ones being sold down the river. As Andrew Neil put it, this is not about isolated lies. This is about a government whose operational language is dishonesty. A party that doesn't just distort facts, but rewrites them. A leader who has taken every sacred principle of politics, honour, service, truth, and swapped them for the hollow currency of PR manipulation. And unless that scam is called out, exposed, and dismantled, it will define not just Starmer's legacy, but Britain's future. The clock is ticking, the truth is out, and the question remains, how long will the people tolerate being governed by deception disguised as duty? The reckoning for Keir Starmer grows darker as his political house of cards begins to sway under the weight of its own duplicity. But what makes this crisis different is not merely the scale of the lies. It's how deliberate and coordinated they appear to be. Starmer's inner circle isn't reacting to chaos. They're manufacturing consent. Every press release, every speech, every staged interview is part of an orchestrated deception, where truth is no longer just bent. It's erased, overwritten, and replaced by curated propaganda. And perhaps most damning of all, they believe they'll get away with it. Because in their view, the British people have become too tired, too confused, and too desperate to question the contradictions anymore. Consider the timing of Starmer's migration messaging. Right as public frustration over immigration reached boiling point, Labour released flashy posters touting a 50% drop in net migration. The implication was clear. Labour was solving the problem. But in truth, it was the Conservative-led Home Office's decision, drafted and enforced before Starmer's team even had access to official levers of power. Yet Starmer claimed ownership, distributed the announcement under Labour branding, and stood silently as his MPs repeated the claim across the media. This isn't a spin. It's fabrication through omission. And Andrew Neil's investigation ripped it apart, exposing not just the falsehood, but the sheer audacity behind it. And it doesn't stop there. Starmer's shadow budget, the one he promises will usher in an era of fairness and fiscal responsibility, is itself built on fiction. For months, Labour figures have been claiming a mysterious 20 billion black hole exists in Britain's finances, one that apparently justifies tax hikes and spending shifts. Yet no economist, no watchdog, and no fiscal body has been able to identify this phantom shortfall. Why? Because it doesn't exist. It's a manufactured myth, designed to scare the public into accepting tighter controls, greater government reach, and increased financial burdens, particularly on the middle class. This isn't mismanagement, it's narrative warfare. But if this is also transparent, why hasn't the public revolted? The answer lies in Starmer's most potent weapon: emotional manipulation. By constantly presenting himself as the antidote to Tory chaos, he frames every lie as a necessary compromise, every betrayal as grown-up politics. This subtle gaslighting conditions the electorate to expect less, question less, and accept more. It's the political equivalent of soft coercion. Keep the tone calm, the words vague, and the promises broad enough to mean everything and nothing all at once. Starmer isn't shouting his way through politics. He's whispering lies behind a mask of reason. Even the way Starmer handles accountability is drenched in manipulation. When confronted, he doesn't explain, he reframes. He'll claim the public misunderstood his position, or that the facts changed, or that the context was different. It's never dishonesty, it's always strategic flexibility. But the record tells a different story. From pledging to nationalise key industries to promising to abolish tuition fees, Starmer has performed a full ideological 180. His defenders call it pragmatism. Critics, like Andrew Neil, call it what it is, calculated betrayal. And the British public is beginning to wake up to the pattern. One of the most chilling aspects of this saga is how thoroughly Starmer has silenced dissent within his own party. MPs who raise alarms about broken promises are sidelined, disciplined, or removed from key roles. Internal democracy has been replaced by rigid control. The party that once prided itself on debate, discourse, and grassroots activism has become a monolithic structure, top-down, tightly managed, and allergic to challenge. This internal rot mirrors the public facade, polished on the outside, but rotten at the core. And let's not ignore the media complicity that shields Starmer's operation. While the Conservative Party was rightly grilled during their scandals, Starmer enjoys a strange immunity. Outlets that once proudly held power to account now tiptoe around Labour's contradictions. Interviews are softer, coverage is friendlier, investigations are delayed or buried. Andrew Neil stands nearly alone in his unflinching scrutiny, and that should terrify anyone who values journalistic integrity. Because when media becomes a partner in political illusion, democracy itself begins to wither. Even international observers are starting to take notice. Foreign correspondents, long baffled by Britain's shifting political terrain, now speak of a country where the opposition has become indistinguishable from the establishment, where promises are no longer evaluated by their sincerity but by their PR value, where leaders can openly contradict themselves on national television without consequence. Starmer has not restored trust in politics. He has weaponized cynicism and presented it as wisdom. The final betrayal comes not in policy, but in principle. Keir Starmer campaigned on honesty, integrity, and transparency. He looked the public in the eye and claimed to be a new kind of politician. But his actions reveal something far more sinister. He's not a break from the past. He's its perfected result. A product of political focus groups, crafted in the laboratories of spin, designed to appease every audience while committing to none. He is the symptom of a broader disease, a political class that sees the truth as an inconvenience to be managed, not a value to be upheld. So where does that leave the nation? Disillusioned, disoriented, and dangerously close to apathy. And perhaps that's the ultimate scam, that Starmer doesn't need to win hearts or minds, just fatigue the electorate into surrender. But Andrew Neil's bombshell has cracked the illusion. The curtain has been pulled back, the mask has slipped, and the real Starmer, the evasive, calculating, and fundamentally dishonest operator, has been laid bare. The question is no longer whether Starmer lied. It's whether the country will continue to accept those lies, because the alternative seems too bleak or uncertain. But democracy doesn't survive on lowered expectations. It thrives on accountability, transparency, and truth. And unless the people demand better, the scam will not only succeed, it will become permanent. If you've followed the story this far, ask yourself this: is this really the leadership Britain needs? Or is it time to reject the illusion and reclaim integrity in our politics? If you're as concerned as we are about the direction this country is heading under Keir Starmer's leadership, then now is the time to act. Don't let this moment pass in silence. Share this video to expose the truth, leave a comment, and let your voice be heard. Do you believe the British people deserve better? And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for regular updates, hard-hitting analysis, and fearless truth-telling. You won't find anywhere else. The establishment counts on your silence. We count on your courage. Stay informed, stay sharp, and stay with us, because Britain deserves the truth.